Hello, LMAC. Myself and Nancy would love to be in Olds today, but we've just arriving back from Croatia and so won't be able to make it. So I hope all of you are having a very, very good time and getting a lot of work done. Rick asked that I say a few words about the upcoming traceability regulations from CFIA. As an auction market owner and as a cattle producer and a beef eater, as well as your representative on CCIA, and their board of directors, and even as an auction market representative for LIS, the brand inspection agency within Alberta, he thought that I may have a unique perspective. Let me lay out the situation and the path through the next few months that I see will happen as we approach June 16th, the last day when submissions for this regulation will be allowed to be submitted. I'm sure you are getting a great deal of insights regarding the details of the proposed regulation. My aim is to compel you to submit a comment and to convince you that you should compel others to submit a comment too. For auction markets and assembly points, the proposed regulation follows the cattle implementation plan that was presented, or at least proposed, more than a decade ago by Steve Primrose and backed by people like Tony Soretsky, Rick Wright, Larry Wetzel, myself, and others. That plan called for grouped animal movement in intermediate sites. That means auction markets, assembly yards, and community pastures. The regulation follows this path, requiring these sites to report move-ins within 7 days, and those move-ins are grouped animal movement. And we will be allowed to be identification sites going forward as well. That may allow retagging in some circumstances, mostly when there's a lost tag. We've all seen that before. I would hope that from the cattle industry, that comments take this as a positive note when it comes to this aspect of the regulations. It's something that we've worked for a long time, and I hope that people see it as a positive outcome. This is not to say that different parts of the country won't face different barriers as we go forward with this regulation. In BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, because we have brand inspection and use manifest to transport cattle, we're already probably 80% there. And it won't take us a long way to get to compliance. Probably a collection of a few data points, and the upload process will need to be developed as well. We don't know what it looks like, and so it remains to become clear, but it might be costly. So we'll see that as it unfolds. In Manitoba, Ontario, and the Maritimes, intermediate sites may feel, well, they'll be starting from scratch and will probably feel a bigger uphill climb to get to compliance. While it's not a perfect outcome, it sure beats reading every animal that is marketed, and that could have been the outcome. So thanks to Rick, Larry, and others for making that a reality, or at least something that CFIA is putting into the regulation. The biggest impact I see from this regulation is the cost to the cow-calf producer and the grasser. These people will now have to read every tag that crosses their property line and report it to the CLTS. Yes, movement within farm property is exempt, but I worry about the burden imposed on these folks when they are buying a breeding animal, a pair, a grass yearling, and they take it to a place with very little facility to scan the animals. A lot of people tell me that this will make money, that I can offer a tag reading service on the way out, but I'm not convinced that this is what I signed up for. We are in the business of marketing cattle. We are not in the business of regulatory compliance. And yet there may be profit coming up, but really and truly, that's not the business we're in. Ultimately, I hope primary producers and the organizations that represent them will comment sufficiently enough to reasonably plan regarding, or that a reasonable plan regarding implementation and enforcement will become a reality. The future of our sector depends on it. Another worry is the lack of funding that accompanies this regulation. The exact dollar amount given to industry to undertake this massive food and animal safety endeavor is zero. Zero. If government is serious about ensuring a healthy, sustainable, traceable, humane food system, surely some dollars could be provided to ensure it comes to fruition. Instead, zero. This doesn't come as much of a surprise to me. After all, the amount of this does not come up as much of a surprise. After all, the amount of faith I have in the regulatory impact assessment, called a RIAS, their version of a benefit cost analysis, is zero. If you submit a comment on this proposed regulation, make sure you mention how the RIAS is based either on out-of-date information or on outlandishly contrived numbers. It's a bit of a joke, but seriously and sadly, it's not really a joke to us. It's reality, and it needs to be fixed. On a positive note, passive reading as a principle is now included in the regulation, or will be when it comes into law. It's a principle that says, as long as you give it a real try, reading what you get when you are reading tags, and we don't have to at this point, but maybe sometime in the future, reading what you get would be allowable if you do put a real effort into it. This may bode well for regulatory change into the future. Here's another one to be wary about. The prohibition to give, sell, or distribute an approved indicator, a tag, seems to me there should be an exemption for this in regard to identification sites, which that will be a role we take on as auction markets and assembly yards into the future. All in all, the proposed regulation has given us what we asked for as a marketing industry, but it might be killing the cattle industry at the same time with the same stroke of a pen. Be wary, but more importantly, act now and submit a comment. I will leave you with this, with how I hope the comment period will unfold. I expect CIA will submit comments that focus on how it, as an administrator, will be impacted and how implementation may occur. OII, LIS, LSS, the brand inspection departments in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC, will submit comments about how they will be impacted and what effort they may take to alleviate industry bottlenecks and barriers to commerce in each province. For example, they may come up with some sort of new design on their manifest, but we'll see that in the future. Maybe they'll offer that, maybe they won't, but that's what I expect to see happen. CCA and provincial cattle organizations, hopefully, will defend the primary producer's freedom to grow their cattle in the way that producer sees fit. Industry organizations like LMAC, other industry organizations like finance associations and feedlot operators will submit their positives and negatives that they see from each part of the industry. Private companies need to submit a comment to ensure that specific requirements under the new regulation can be met while still ensuring profitability, animal soundness, and worker safety. Individuals, hopefully those that are active in the cattle industry, people like you, will put forward their perspective regarding the good, the bad, and the ugly that this regulation will impose on them and their animals. That's my hope. Thank you, and good luck with LMAC 2023.